Hello and welcome to the Park Life Podcast. My name is Mike. I'm a travel agent that specializes in all things Disney. This is episode 62 of our Park Life Podcast, and it's chapter 9, The History of Walt Disney World. And today, for chapter 9, we're covering Cinderella's Castle. Some fascinating information about the castle itself that I thought would be great to share with you today. First off, the Cinderella Castle at Walt Disney World in Florida was inspired by a number of European castles. Disney spared no expense trying to come up with a theme and concept that would show a rich history from European castles. Cinderella's castle stands at 189 feet tall. It is the tallest structure at Magic Kingdom. And I'll have a little bit more about why 189 feet here in just a little bit, but it shows the ingenuity of Disney and Walt when they created the concept of the castle and the things that they focused on to make sure that the magic was as good as it could be with the castle. The castle itself was constructed with steel framed braces and fiberglass exterior walls. This is kind of one of those fun fact trivia questions. How many bricks are there in Cinderella's castle? The answer is 0. There are no bricks that are used to make Cinderella's castle. It is all a fiberglass exterior shell. Disney uses something called forced perspective that happens down Main Street, and it certainly happens on the castle itself. The next time you're at Walt Disney World in the Magic Kingdom, take a look at the castle up close. The lower to the ground, the fiberglass that looks like bricks are larger in size low to the ground. The further up you go, those perceived bricks, again, fiberglass shell, are smaller as nature. In nature, they get progressively smaller the higher up you go, which provides this forced perspective of giving the grandeur of the castle to make it seem like it's even bigger than it already is. The structure itself was built to withstand hurricane strength winds up to 110 miles an hour. Pretty amazing, again, when you consider the fact that the construction started in the 1960s and ended in early 1971, and I'll cover that here in a moment. But they thought about hurricanes back then. And, now today in 2025, we have so much science and technology and radars and everything else that goes into hurricanes. We had none of that back in the 60s and 70s. And so to come up with the concept of a structure that could withstand winds up to 110 miles an hour, knowing that Orlando and the Kissimmee area is all within 150 to 100 miles inland from shore, barely protected anyway, that castle is not going anywhere. Um, Inside the castle, and I think a lot of you know this, but there is a restaurant that's called Cinderella's Royal Table. It is a very popular attraction for character meals with the princesses. It's one of the harder reservations to get by all accounts. If you're utilizing a dining plan, it does take 2 dining credits for dining at Cinderella's Royal Table. If you're paying by cash, you do prepay. That shows you just how valuable this reservation is. They want to make sure that people make the reservation, actually fulfill their obligation and attend that reservation. If you've ever walked through the castle, which you can do in Florida at Magic Kingdom, there are a number of mosaics that feature different murals from Cinderella, different scenes from the story itself, which are beautiful. Um, I have more on the mosaics here in a little bit that I'll share with you a little bit more in detail. Again, I think you probably know this. There is a secret suite, a luxury Cinderella castle suite inside of Magic Kingdom's Cinderella Castle. What you may not know is that it is a private space generally given away as prizes, and it has never in its history been booked by anyone. You're not allowed to go online and book it. What I think is pretty cool, though, and I'll get to this shortly, is when was the suite actually finished? Construction of the castle itself took 18 months in total, and it led to a July 1971 completion ahead of the park opening. Park opened on October 1st, 1971. The castle itself is 100 feet taller than Sleeping Beauty's castle at Disneyland. So I know Disneyland's castle gets a lot of grief for being smaller than the Disney World's. I don't think I realized it was 100 feet shorter, but definitely a much grander scaled castle in Florida's Disney World. But you also have to remember Disneyland's castle was built in the 1950s, so far earlier. In 1971, any structure that was taller than 190 feet in Florida required a flashing red airplane beacon light. Disney knew this, and that's why the castle stands at 189 feet tall, keeping it just shy of the 1971 guidelines, so that the castle itself could maintain as much magic as possible and not have a red flashing light warning aircraft of the castle. Pretty cool. Now let's talk a little bit about the moat around the castle itself. This first stat to me is stunning. Over 3 million gallons of water make up the moat around the castle. Pretty fascinating. And 3 million gallons. All I can do is walk down the grocery aisle at the store and see gallon upon gallon of milk and imagine just how many gallons of milk would take up 3 million gallons of water. This next one I think is awesome, though. The moat was built in a way to help prevent mosquitoes. And if you think about it, I've been to Disney World dozens and dozens of times. I don't think I ever once worn bug spray inside the parks, and I've never walked away being bit up by mosquitoes or anything else. So the design and construction of things like the moat help to prevent that. There are 27 total turrets, the little towers that make up the Magic Kingdom's castle. 600 tons of steel braced frame construction make up the inner structure and is encircled by 10-inch reinforced concrete walls. You can probably see why it's 110-mile-an-hour hurricane strength construction to withstand those winds. There are 3 different elevators inside of the castle, something that I don't think I've ever considered before as we've walked through it many a times, but there are 3 different elevators. The first one will take you to Cinderella's royal table for dining. The second one is a dumbwaiter that helps move food from different levels of the castle itself. And the third is an elevator that does take guests, if they're lucky enough to win a prize, up to Cinderella's suite. I mentioned the mosaic tiles earlier. Let's go back to that for a second. It took 22 months to complete, and there are over 300,000 pieces of Italian glass and more than 500 colors that make up those 5 murals walking through Cinderella's castle. Amazing. The tiles themselves were cut by hand, with the smallest piece being about the size of the head of a tack. So you can imagine why it would take nearly 2 years to construct that with 300,000 pieces of Italian glass cut in different sizes, shapes, and colors. This suite that I mentioned earlier that we would all love to stay in was originally intended for Walt and his family and executives to visit and stay in when they came down to Florida. Since Walt died in 1966, well ahead of the 1971 opening of the Magic Kingdom, the suite remained unfinished. Interesting facts. July of 2005, Disney announced that the suite would be finished. So if you were ever at Disney World, Magic Kingdom, and the castle prior to 2005, there was no Cinderella suite. So again in 25, they announced they would finish the suite as a 650 square foot suite that would be finished with a royal bed chamber for up to 6 guests. It opened in 2006, so the suite itself is not even 20 years old. Pretty amazing. It was a prize giveaway and has never been able to be booked. I mentioned that earlier. The suite is 4 stories above the main level of the Magic Kingdom itself, which is why there's an elevator that takes you there. But can you imagine the views from up there? Want to get married? No, I'm not proposing. But if you had any interest of ever getting married near the castle itself, the East Plaza Gardens of Magic Kingdom does host marriages. Sounds pretty amazing. There's a catch. Prices start at a minimum $25,000 for a ceremony on the grass outside of the castle. Now, here's something else that a lot of you probably have taken advantage of. I never have because I don't have girls and it didn't exist when my kids were younger. But Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique makeovers inside of the castle itself. Now they do have packages for girls and boys. But again, when my kids were younger, I mean, my kids are in their 30s, except for my youngest who's 20. It's quite a while ago for them. And that was something that we really never looked into back in the day to see if it even existed, let alone existed for boys to do makeup packages. In 1996, the castle itself was transformed into a giant pink birthday cake celebrating the 25th anniversary of Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World. I remember that vividly. Yes, I mean, it goes from the traditional look of a castle to a pink birthday cake. Can't miss it. Another fun one, and this one I think slid. A lot of people don't remember it, but in 2004, to celebrate Stitch's great escape, the castle was covered in toilet paper, and a big sign read, "Stitch is king." Sounds just right up Stitch's alley as to something he would do. In April of 2020, Disney shone blue lights onto the castle in honor of the healthcare workers on the front lines of the pandemic. Very sentimental, uh, powerful message delivered by Disney to show support all of the frontline leaders during the pandemic. Did you know this? Tinkerbell's first flight off of the castle during the fireworks show happened on July 4th, 1985. So Tinkerbell has been flying from Cinderella's castle now for 40 years, weather permitting. Ever wonder this? How fast does Tinkerbell fly heading down the castle? Maximum speed for Tink's flight is 15 miles an hour. I know I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll say it again. I think Disney could sell ziplining packages to guests to give you the Tinkerbell experience during the daytime. How amazing would that be? Gosh, that would be so cool. Did you know this? Walt and Mickey Mouse himself were never part of the original design of the castle or any of the grounds around the castle. However, as we know now, there is a statue out in front of the castle. The beloved hand in hand partner structure was added to the courtyard in 1995. So 24 years after the park opened and 30 years ago this year. Pretty cool facts about the castle. I think a lot of the things that I mentioned we kind of take for granted. Next time you're there and you walk through, really appreciate the mosaic, those five different murals that they did with those tiles, and imagine the work and the tedious time it took to place small little cut glass pieces to provide the imagery that provides. I'd love to hear from you if you've ever eaten at Cinderella's Royal Table, if you plan to in the future, what the experience is like, what you're looking forward to. If you've had a child do Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, I'd love to hear about that from you. Actually, when you really sit and just think about the different things around the Magic Kingdom itself, any of the things we've covered in the previous chapters, the castle here, future chapters that I'll cover, you really have to take a moment and appreciate the time and effort and energy and foresight that Disney had for the magic that 50 some years later is still as incredible and special as it was on opening day in 1971. I think that's it for today's little capture of the Cinderella Castle in the Magic Kingdom of Walt Disney World. We'll be back again next time with the next chapter of the history of Walt Disney World. I would love for you to join us. Park Life Live runs Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on the Park Life channel on YouTube, as well as on my TikTok channel, Mike underscore Disney Travel. You can also catch me on Instagram and YouTube at Mike underscore Disney Travel, or on Facebook at Mike's Magical World Vacations. I also drop recorded podcasts on Monday mornings at approximately 5 a.m. Eastern here on the Park Life Podcast YouTube channel, as well as on the Park Life Podcast Spotify channel. So if you're in your car, out on a walk, you can always listen to the podcast. Love to get your feedback on today's topic. If you have a topic that you'd like to hear about, a future item for the history of Walt Disney World, or something outside of the history of Walt Disney World, please let me know. I always like to study and learn up things and share information that people are excited to hear about. But I think that's a wrap for today. I hope you have a great evening. When you wake up tomorrow, remember it's a great day to be alive, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Take care, everybody.